With the Phillies' hot start, the Braves find themselves playing from behind right now in the division. Is that a good thing? Could the Braves catch up? Do they want to catch up? We'll discuss all of that and more on today's Mailbag episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I am your host, Jacob Mastriani. You can follow me on social media at ShortstopBall. Check out the podcast there as well at LockedOn_Braves. Send in any questions, comments, or feedback that you have for the podcast and be part of the show, like many of you will be tonight on our Mailbag episode. You're watching this on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button as well to help share the show with others so that they can find us here at Locked On Braves. You're listening on the audio version. Thank you so much for your support. If you would, leave me a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify. I would greatly appreciate it. That can help the show as well. And thank you for all the support that you give me here at Locked On Braves. If you're an everydayer, let me know down in the comments section below. I know I had several on the last video. Let me know they're an everydayer. I really do appreciate it. And we are live. This is our live Mailbag podcast we're doing on Thursday night. And we got Win Gracer in here, Leland, CJ Palmer, Floyd, Donnelly, Sethan, and I'm sure more are going to be trickling in as we go. So thank you so much for joining me here live tonight. This is our Mailbag episode for the week. Always enjoy doing this one. Before we get into our questions, though, today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So this is our weekly Mailbag episode. We got more coming in. Ricardo Ortiz joining us here live. We got tons of questions to get to as usual. And you all send in great questions each and every week. I'm going to start with this one from Nate, who says, with the division race shaping up the way it is and considering remaining strength of schedule, who do you think wins the division and by how many games? The Phillies can't keep up the torrid pace they're on, while the Braves have played one of the hardest schedules to start the year. Kind of discussed this a little bit on Thursday morning's episode. And look, I told you, and I don't want to keep tooting my own horn here. I don't really think it's much to brag about, but I can remember on the podcast, I told you after the Braves won that series in Philadelphia to begin the year, I said, do not be surprised if by the end of April, the Phillies are in first place. You look at the schedule they had, not only in April, but the schedule they have in May too. And it is a very favorable schedule. Now, even having said that, I think the Phillies have handled that schedule even better than I thought they would. And I was very high on the Phillies going into the season. I think I was higher than a lot of people out there on the Phillies coming into the season. I thought they were right up there with the Dodgers and the Braves in terms of just on paper talent. I did have some question marks about the bottom of that lineup, guys like Castellanos, Realmuto, who I thought might be sliding back a little bit. I didn't know the bottom of their rotation been as good as it has been. They've obviously got some surprise contributions, but either way, all that to say, I thought the Phillies would be one of the three best teams in the National League, and they've been that and more. They've been perhaps the best team, them and the Dodgers in the National League so far. But again, I told you after that series to start the year, I said, do not be surprised if the Phillies overtake the Braves and maybe hold on to the division for a little while, just because they have such a soft schedule, and the Braves schedule has turned out to be pretty difficult. And the Braves have managed it. And I think that's something we have to keep in mind. The Braves have had a tough schedule. They still have a really good record, and their offense hasn't even gotten going yet. Their three best hitters all have an OPS around 700. And that's not going to stay. I mean, that is going to improve. So I guess to answer Nate's question here, I think it's going to be a battle to the end. I do think the Braves eventually catch them. I think the depth of the Braves, and at some point this Braves schedule has to get a little bit easier. They can't keep facing all these good pitching staffs like they have. And like I said, the offense is going to get going at some point. I think for the most part, the Braves have weathered the storm. They've done more than weathered the storm against maybe one of their most difficult parts of the schedule so far this year. They've done it without Spencer Strider. They've done it without Sean Murphy. They did it without Max Fried for 2 weeks as well while he got it going. So I think the Braves have, again, in their hopefully what's going to be their worst stretch of the year offensively, they've still managed to be, 10 games over 500. So I think things will get better for them. As Nate says, as good as I think the Phillies are, I don't know if they can keep up this pace that they're on right now. I think there's going to be some regression for them, especially once the schedule picks up a little bit. So I do think the Braves come back and win it, but I think it's going to be a tight one. I think it's probably going to be less than 5 games. I don't think this is going to be an easy one like it was last year. I think the question comes in, does it matter? And look, we've seen the Braves do it 2 different ways the last couple of years. 2 years ago, they fought tooth and nail to the finish with the Mets. They won the division, and it just seemed like they ran out of gas in the postseason. Last year, they ran away with the division. They clinched it in Philadelphia in the middle of September and had 2+ weeks of games that just honestly didn't mean much for them, and they came into the playoffs just completely dead. So they've done it both ways. Neither time seems to have mattered. Maybe the magic formula is having a division race all the way up to the end that you lose, and then you go into the wild card series having already been playing those competitive games, and you win and get hot. That's risky, certainly. I'm not hoping for that. I want to win the division. I think that's very impressive feat in its own right. But hey, maybe that's the route the Braves go this year. Maybe I think it is going to be a race to the end between the Braves and the Phillies. I don't think the Braves are going to run away with it. But again, either way, I hope that there is competition to the end. I think that is better than just winning the division with 2 weeks left to play and trying to stay motivated, because then not only are you getting a 5-day break between the regular season and the postseason that can get your bats cold regardless, but then if you have 2 weeks at the end of the regular season where there's just not much on the line in any of those games, sure, maybe you're playing for a home field advantage a little bit. That's even more time where your bats just, are cold from not having competitive bats. You're probably getting guys off here and there. That's just, again, I don't know the perfect recipe either way, but I do think it's going to be a battle all year long for the division. See, Garrett Clemens saying, jumping in for a minute live. Thank you so much. Michael Lawrence, William the Worston here as well. Thanks for joining us live. I went long on that one, but I thought that was a pretty interesting question. I think there's others about the division in here, but now I'm just going to go kind of from the top to the bottom as how they were submitted here on Twitter. Caden Hurd saying, how long do you think till Acuna and Riley get going? When do we take back the division lead? So this was the other one about the division. I think the Braves take back the division lead in August. I think there was a tweet today. It might have been from my good friend Trent, who gave all the dates of when the Braves have retaken the division in recent years. It might have been Bean Eater. I don't know. Somebody on Twitter posted it. I can try to find that for you and retweet it out. But most of those were late in the year. So I think the Braves, when they retake it for good, if they do, I think it'll be in August. How long till Acuna and Riley get going? I thought they've shown signs. I thought Riley was showing signs before he got injured. I still think Acuna has shown signs. It hasn't been as consistent, but I have seen him drive balls to the right center field, to right field in the last week more than I have in the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season. So I think both of those guys are really close to getting going. Kaz Buckeye says, is there any consistent thing you can point to as why the entire lineup, sans Ozuna and Travis d'Arnaud, are hitting below their true talent level? They all have different issues, so I doubt it's just bizarre for it all to happen at once. I mean, I know that's tough to say, but it is just bizarre. It's all happening at once. I've talked about the struggles for Acuna. I've talked about the struggles for all three of these guys a lot. For Acuna, it's just he's not on it. The timing is off. He's not finding the barrel of the baseball. And it's been going on for too long. And now it's to a point where I think he's pressing. He's trying to do too much to make up for, the sluggish start that he had. And the coaches even admitted that with him getting a break on Wednesday. I think he's trying to do too much at this point to make up for, 3 weeks worth of a slump that he's been in. For Riley, this happens to Riley in just about every year where he has an ups and downs where he just gets caught in between that fastball and that slider and he can't lay off of it. And he's just been caught in between. But Riley will have cold and hot streaks throughout the year. He has yet to really have a season where he is completely consistent from beginning to end. And for Matt Olson, I mean, I've said it all along, and I know it's hard to understand or even believe. I have had no worries at all about Matt Olson. The strikeout rate there for a little bit, especially in early April, was way too high, reminiscent of the strikeout rate he had last April. But even that has been better lately. But there's been nothing in Matt Olson's game that I've seen that has worried me. He is still making really hard contact, and he's still taking his walks. He has cut down the strikeout rate, like I said. I mean, of those three, I have been concerned about the least. And I know that's going to sound crazy to a lot of Braves fans because Matt Olson's the one that has had the average around 200. But there has just been nothing in Matt Olson's game, like I said, other than the strikeouts, the numerous strikeouts that he had early on, and he's done a better job of. There's been nothing in Matt Olson's game that's really concerned me. But it is just bizarre. It's all kind of happening at the same time, which is terrible for an offense that's been struggling as mightily as the Braves one has been. All right, we got several more questions to get to, including more about Ian Anderson, Hurston Waldrop, and many others. We'll get to those here next. It's summertime. School is almost out. It's almost summertime and school is almost out. And you know what? There's nothing better for me, in my mind, than going to the ballpark in the summertime, taking the family. It's always with a family tradition of ours growing up. You went to the ballpark in the summertime, and you can do that with your family or with your friends now and not worry about all the stress of buying tickets with the Gametime app. I've told you about Gametime all the time because I love using this app. I don't go to events anymore unless I'm using the Gametime app. It's the only place that I buy my tickets. The last several Braves games I've been to, I purchased them on the Gametime app. They now are an authorized ticket marketplace for Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down closer it gets to first pitch. You can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. as well. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Gametime. Couple of features that I love about the Gametime app. It's all in upfront pricing. You're not getting to the checkout window and then all of a sudden all these other fees are getting added in. You thought you had a great deal, but you didn't. They give you all in pricing upfront. And then the other thing I love is the view from your seat. Never buy a ticket unless you know what your view is going to look like and you are satisfied with it. Obviously, price goes into that. And again, you get that all in pricing upfront. So you know before you click on it what the price is, and then you know what your view is going to look like. You can do that all in the Gametime app. Download the Gametime app today, create an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I want to remind you about a Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming that you hear with ESPN, Fox Sports. You get analysts who watch your team every day. Talk about your team every day. You get that with Locked On Sports Today. Again, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program just for you with can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's jump back into the questions here. Joey Milby says, what's up, Jake? More likely closer of the future, Giancarlo Lara or Hurston Waldrop? Basically, who has more reliever risk in your opinion with his promotion to Double-A? Is Schwellenbach on the list of possibilities for the show with another good month or two, or is 25 his earliest realistic shot? So some good questions here. On the minor league level, I would say Lara is more of the reliever risk just because, yeah, you invested a lot in Hurston Waldrop. It's gonna take a lot for them to give up on him as a starter. And Carlos Lara, if he cannot figure out the command like he did in the second half of 2023, then it's just, it's pretty easy. And now, he is still young, so he could build into a stronger frame, but his frame kind of, in my mind, leads to more of a reliever. Not that I'm giving up on him as a starter at all. Again, he's still very young, but if you're asking me who has the higher reliever risk between those two, I definitely would say Giancarlo Lara. As for Schwellenbach, I don't think he gets a chance this year. You got to remember, he just started making his way back last year after Tommy John surgery. They kind of slow played him a little bit this year, starting him at Single-A. I thought maybe they would, if they would have been maybe more aggressive with him and started him at Double-A, then I would have thought maybe there's a chance he gets up this season. But I think things would have to go really wrong in the starting rotation for Spencer Schwellenbach to get a chance. Look, when you get up to Double-A with the Braves, you're just a phone call away, certainly. But I think he's pretty far down the pecking order, even though I'm very impressed with him. I think I had him ranked number 4 in Braves prospects coming into the season. I was very impressed with him watching video. So he's one of my favorites, certainly. And I'm definitely rooting for him. But I think 2025 is more realistic timeline for Spencer Schwellenbach. Joey also said, more Miners talk with this long stretch of consecutive games. How do you think Snitney managed the roster to get someone from AAA to make a spot start? Who makes that start? They have been giving Sale and Lopez extra time between starts. I'm sure they want that to continue. I think if somebody makes a spot start, and I think it might be wise to do that during this big stretch of games they have coming up, consecutive games they have, it's going to be either Alan Winans, Darius Vines, or a name that's eluding me at the moment, but it's going to be one, of those guys. I don't think it's going to be an AJ Smith-Shawver or anything like that. I think it's going to be a Dylan Dodd, Darius Vines, Alan Winans. Those were the three names I was trying to think of, because it probably would just be one start. It'd be a move where, if Steven sticks around, you option him down and you call up one of those guys to give you a spot start. I think that would most likely be the move if the Braves decide, to do that during this stretch of games. But again, I think they probably should at least think about it, obviously, depending on how things play out. Max says, should the Braves quit? This is the worst baseball team ever. Hopefully Max is getting there. I think Max is getting there. The Braves have obviously still a fantastic team. And despite everything, again, they're still really, really good record so far right now. Isaac Rayfield says, I know that's a temporary piece while Riley is out, and I'm definitely pleasantly surprised regarding his output recently. But do you think Zach Short will remain with the club through the remainder of the season as our bench utility player? It's possible. He has been impressive. I do think he's probably, I don't think he'll be here when the season ends. Let's put it that way. I think David Fletcher is that next man in line. And I think the only reason David Fletcher is not on the bench now is just because they want him getting every day at bats in case somebody does have to miss significant time and then he fills in. I feel like there's, everything's going to depend on injuries and options and how they move guys around. But I think once you get to the deadline, there's probably an opportunity there to upgrade their bench like they did with Nicky Lopez last year. And I could see that pushing Zach Short out at some point, but he's been impressive so far. Leland says, what is going on with the progress of Ian Anderson? Info has been sketchy at best. And I had several people ask me about Ian Anderson. And you're right. I've heard nothing on him here as of late. You really don't have to at this point. He's not going to be back before the All-Star break. But there hasn't been really anything on him since the season started. So I would imagine he's still just, rehabbing, working his way back. I think it's going to be a second half of the season type of thing for Ian Anderson. So I would not count on hearing much about him until we get closer to the All-Star break. But I haven't heard anything on him at this point. I can check with Grant, who's obviously more in tune with what's going on with the team and see if he's heard anything. But I have heard nothing about Ian Anderson either. Leland also said, what happened to the statement, see the ball, hit the ball? Everyone says the batter was looking for a different pitch and struck out or hit a fly ball. I mean, that's kind of been the motto of the Braves. Go up there, look for a pitch. If you get it, crush it. If not, then kind of work the at-bat. Freddie Freeman does that a lot too. He'll go up there and try to ambush first pitch if he thinks he knows what he's getting, but then he'll work his way back into an at-bat. It just feels like the Braves hitters have been caught in between a lot this year. I'm not really sure why that's been the case. And then final one from Leland. Why do they continue to paint a coach's box for first and third base? The coaches definitely do not abide by the boundaries. Seems to me to be a useless marking. I agree. I think they paint it there just for nostalgia at this point, but it has never in my lifetime been something that they have forced coaches to do. Steve Lamb says, trivia question, which Braves outfielder has the most assists on the season so far? I'm going to say Jared Kelenic. I feel like it's a trick question, but I'm pretty sure it's Jared Kelenic. I did not look this up beforehand, so let me know what you got. And then bonus trivia question, try to guess 2 songs from Spencer Strider's list on the newly advertised Braves vinyl record giveaway. So I'm not a song person by any means, and certainly don't want to get into the mind of Spencer Strider. But I'm going to have to say one song has to be Wild Thing, right? I mean, with the number 99, given that vibe from Major League, I'm going to say one of them has to be Wild Thing. But let me know what you think. What's going to be on that vinyl record on that on the promotion night with Spencer Strider's list there. Let me know what you think. Goldie says, I'm curious your thoughts on the impact of not having EY as the first base coach might be affecting some of the base running mistakes that we have seen and also the missed balk calls. Interesting on the missed balk calls. I don't know, what kind of impact EY had on that. I'm pointing that out, but the base running thing, I feel like the Braves haven't been a good base running team for years. Look, I am not trying to discredit Eric Young and Ron Washington and their coaching skills. They're obviously both really good coaches. The impact for me of losing Ron Washington and Eric Young went more to what they did in the clubhouse and just the guys that they were. They kept everything loose. You constantly saw them joking with the guys. The guys seemed to love them and get along with them. I think that was more impactful than their actually coaching. And maybe I'm in the minority there. And again, I'm not there every day. I'm not the one being coached up by them. I think that was overblown a little bit. The Braves defense, infield defense in particular, has been even better this year. So again, I'm not trying to say they're bad coaches. They weren't, certainly. I think that's been a little overblown. My thing with EY and Ron and Wash was more what they meant in the clubhouse for the guys. So I'm not blaming Tom Goodwin or Matt Tuiasosopo for anything this year, at least at this point. It's definitely early. So I don't know that it's having really that much of an impact at all on the field. Like I said, my biggest worry with losing those two guys is what happens off the field. Got a lot more questions to get to on today's podcast. I see there's comments going out in the comment section right now. Floyd Donnelly telling everybody hit that like button. I appreciate it. Michael Lawrence, Jeffrey Humphreys in here as well. William and the Worst, Wingrace are still in here. Ryan Webb, Jake S., and Chase Hester. Thank you so much for joining us here. We'll get into more of these questions here next. The NBA and NHL season or postseason is coming down to the wire here, and you can get in on all of the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. You check out the NBA right now. The Celtics are the favorite to win it all at plus 155. The Knicks have the worst odds at plus 2,700. And then in the NHL, it's the Stars who are the favorite at plus 290 with Tom Glavine's Boston Bruins at plus 2,700. Not great there, Tom. I saw today they have a dedicated tab for Paul Skeens as well, which is pretty cool. They set the over-under for number of strikeouts for his next start coming up on Friday at 6.5. So you can go check out that Paul Skeens tab there. But the FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. Also visit FanDuel.com/playsafe for tools and resources to help you stay in control of the way you play. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Jumping back into the questions here, we got several more to get to and try to get to some of the comments here. To see Joe Me joining the chat as well. Thanks so much for joining Joe Me, an everydayer out there. Large Lar says, do you think that Ronald's whirlwind season last year, coupled with playing winter ball, has influenced this season's struggles? It's hard to say. For Brian Snitker to look at him in the dugout and admit that he looks tired is the only thing that has me thinking that maybe he's done too much. It's only May, and you're telling me a 26-year-old is already getting tired. That doesn't concern me or really worry me, but it is something to just keep in the back of my mind. He is 26. I can't really imagine that he is all that tired at the moment. I think more than anything, and I've discussed, I just think he's pressing. I think Ronald Acuna Jr. wants to be the best player in baseball. I think he desires strongly to be the best player in baseball. It's not happening for him right now, and I'm sure that's frustrating because he knows he is better than what he is producing at the moment. And I think more than anything, it's becoming a mental thing for Ronald. When he swung at that 3-0 pitch the other day with runners on second and third, that to me was, and not just to mention all the times he's gotten picked off here lately, that to me signaled a guy he's trying to get it all back with one swing. He's trying to do too much right now, and it's frustrating to him because he knows he's not performing like he's capable. In my mind, and that's just me, trying to read a room from, my couch in Birmingham, Alabama. That's a guy in my mind that is pressing more than anything. And I think this is more of it needs to be a mental break for Ronald at the moment, more than just a physical tired break. But again, that's just my take. Again, I'm not in the clubhouse, and certainly Snicker and others are there every day and can speak more to that. Cats Buckeye says, Ray Kerr may get optioned by the time you record this podcast. I don't think he has yet, although something will happen on Friday. But could you see him being a high leverage pitcher in October? He honestly looks the nastiest of all our lefties. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. I still think Aaron Bummer's good. I still think AJ Minter has been really good, as long as he's stopped giving up the home runs. But I do think Ray Kerr is good. I can see him replacing Tyler Matzik if Matzik cannot figure it out. And, Matzik just isn't able to make his way back. And I forgot to mention Dylan Lee as well. Dylan Lee has been fantastic this year. So the Braves have a lot of really good left-handed options. I agree that Ray Kerr has looked good and certainly, has good stuff. I could see him making the postseason roster as another lefty. But right now, I'd put him behind AJ Minter, Aaron Bummer, and Dylan Lee just because of, their experience, and they're guys that have been there, done that. I mean, when Ray Kerr has come in so far, it hasn't necessarily been in high leverage situations. So I'd want to see him, face several high leverage situations like that in close games, facing tough lefties. I want to see that before I really give Ray Kerr that nod to say, yes, I want him in the postseason in big moments. Chris Daniel says, how would you compare Waldrop now with Ian Anderson pre-surgery? Both throw over the top, primarily fastball off-speed pitchers with command concerns. I would say they're not comparable in my mind. Well, all right. You could say it like this. Ian Anderson had a plus changeup that got him to the big leagues, and it allowed him to succeed at the big leagues with pretty much just one good pitch, and a pitch that he couldn't always command. So if you're making that comparison, then yes, I think maybe there is a little bit of similarity there in the fact that Waldrop has one. He doesn't just have one plus pitch. He has 3+ pitches, but I think one that, he can command in the split changeup. And it's a pitch that I think is good enough. If he were to pitch at the big leagues now, he could get hitters out and he could succeed. And it could be one of those situations like Ian Anderson where he's just wildly effective. And he may walk 4, he may only go 5 innings, but he's only going to give up, 1 or 2 runs because the stuff is just that good. So, now that I think on it a little bit more, Chris, maybe there is somewhat of a comparison there. I think Waldrop's stuff is even better, though. I think the slider went on is much better. I think his fastball went on is much better. But again, both guys do struggle with command. But I think Waldrop's stuff can be so good that he's still able to be effective, just like with Ian Anderson. The stuff was still so good that he could be effective until he wasn't. Brad Dixon, do you have any information on Ian Anderson? We already talked about that. Like where he's at in his recovery process and any idea when we can expect to see him back on the mound. I don't know where he's at, but again, I wouldn't be surprised we don't hear much until late June, early July on him. And then another one from Brad says, the Braves have started off inconsistent, below expectations. When you add the numerous injuries occurring so often so early, I'm worried we can't continue to hang on like we are. And if something doesn't give, we are going to slip. Hey, good news is on the way. You could be getting Pierce Johnson back this weekend. Austin Riley could be coming back this weekend. Sean Murphy could be back in the next week or two. Braves are actually starting to get pretty healthy. Like, you're not going to get Spencer Strider back. You know that at this point. But I think the best is yet to come for this Braves team. I am more encouraged by the fact they've had all these injuries. They've had the offense as bad as it's been, and they're still right there in the mix. And they're still, more than 10 games over 500. And then last one from Nancy. Braves media says their offensive struggles are because of weather, balls, facing great pitchers, etc. Tired of excuses because last year I wanted them to face teams on winning streak or a great pitcher. I watch knowing more often than not they would win. Your thoughts? I agree at this point, and I am still one of those people, although I'm not a media member, that makes some of those excuses. But I'm with you. I'm kind of tired of the excuses at this point. I want to see some results. It's been almost going on a month now that we've been talking about this with the offense. Where are the results on the field? And yeah, last year, I didn't care who they were going up against. I felt like they had a chance to win. And there are just games now where, you fall behind 3 or 4 runs and it just doesn't feel that way. So yeah, it is a little bit different feeling right now. And it probably will be until we see this offense get on a roll for not just one game, but, several games in a row. I think we're going to need to see this offense get on a roll. That's all the questions from social media that were sent in. See Protect PR in here saying, what about Forrest Wall? I think he's going to be on the bench later in the year. I could see him getting called up, but again, he's somebody else you want batting every day. See a lot of other people joining in on the chat section as well, talking about Kerr, how good that he's been. And I agree. I'm not saying he can't be that playoff guy. I'm just saying I need to see him in more high leverage situations in the regular season before I kind of just crown him that high leverage 7th, 8th inning guy against tough lefties. But I certainly think he has that potential. He's been really, really good and has really good stuff. So I'm certainly excited about what we got from Ray Kerr. And again, just one of those moves in the offseason people didn't think much of, but it's another reliever who the Braves have a lot of control over. He had an option left, so this is the year where you can send him up and down and not worry about losing him. And like I said, you could be losing A.J. Minter after the year. Ray Kerr could be stepping up into the role for that. See William the Worst saying, once our complete lineup is healthy, we'll be golden. And I agree. And once they get going, CJ Palmer, would you shuffle the lineup at all to see if it sparks the offense? You kind of have an excuse built in to do it now because Riley is out. So you could kind of shuffle it around. The thing is, Michael Harris has been cold here as of late. Where are you going to bat him? Ozzy's kind of been a little cold the past week or so. It's just, who are you moving up in these spots? And it's kind of difficult to move things around when basically everybody outside of Ozuna has been struggling at some point. But yeah, William, I mean, if you want to move Ozuna to 3 and move Riley down to 5 behind Olsen, maybe you do that. I don't really know how effective that could be. Maybe you move Riley up to 2nd, put Olsen 3rd and Ozuna behind him and put Ozzy behind him. I mean, maybe you could shake some things up, but I think ultimately you just leave it the same and hope that these guys figure it out. And as LR says here, last comment, better to struggle now than in October. And I agree with that. Thank you all so much for joining. That will end it for this episode of Locked On Braves. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe on YouTube if you're new. Follow us on social media at shortstopball, at @LockedOn_Braves, and we will talk to you next time.